right, hello and welcome to another Expert Inside interview. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined from San Antonio, Texas, by Shell Mendelson. How you doing, Shell?
I'm great. Great. How are you?
Oh, fantastic. And Shell is a seasoned career coach with over 30 years experience specializing in supporting adults with ADHD. She helps individuals navigate career transitions, uncover their true strengths, and build fulfilling careers without forcing themselves into neurotypical molds. Obviously, your approach is deeply personal, rooted in your own journey with ADHD, and it's designed to empower clients to work with their brains, not against them. And that's what we're going to talk
Mhm.
about. So you have helped redefine career success for ADHD professionals and help business, but also help businesses create workplaces that work for them too. So let's use that as a starting point. What are the challenges that an ADHD person finds in a, say, neurotypical workspace or a workspace that doesn't know how to harness their strengths?
Well, what I typically find is that when people contact me for help, they're usually at a point in very often the corporate world where they're finding themselves having to sort of fit a square peg in a round hole, fit themselves into a situation that it doesn't come naturally to them, where they feel awkward, out of sorts, and they're not really recognized or given the flexibility that they need to really do their very best work.
Hmm.
So they're very often not in the right environment. And they don't, since we aren't naturally taught what the
Hmm.
right environment is for us, what I do as a coach and a counselor and have been doing in this work for many, many years is to try and not try, but to have them go through a process where they're identifying all of the must haves, that all of the pieces of the puzzle that need to be there for them to actually thrive in their work environment. And I'm just now starting to connect with employers about what to how to help their employees to do the same, questions to ask them. And it's really a process
Hmm.
that they need to sort of go through in what I call a career bubble. I put my clients in the career bubble so they're not influenced even by their spouses, their friends, their
Right.
coworkers. They're just able to explore and express who they are without the interference of having to people please.
Right.
you know
So as employers and colleagues and in the workplace, what misconceptions do we have about people with ADHD, and what ways do we kind of inhibit, maybe subconsciously or not deliberately inhibit their success?
I think, there's a lot of myths about ADHD, about people who have ADHD. And, I think they get stuck in that loop of, oh, they've got all the, prejudices or whatever that come with that, without really recognizing who the person is. But as far as the person with ADHD is concerned, they've really got to enjoy their work and be very clear and focused on what they're doing. And the only way to do that is to know what they want, is to absolutely know what they want. Right. And that's something that very few people really know and can articulate. What is
Hmm.
it that I want in my work? What is it that is going to make it optimal for me to perform in the workplace? And what many people don't realize about individuals who are with ADHD or neurodivergent is that when we are in under the right conditions, we thrive and we can often be the best employees they've got.
Hmm.
When we have the opportunity to have have the needs met or the accommodations that we need. And very often they're not great. It's not a lot of accommodation. It's just
Right.
very specific to that person and
Mhm.
knowing what that accommodation is, right?
R Right, and I
So
guess, just what you mentioned there a moment ago, I guess, is probably the first trap that, that most of us would fall into is defining somebody by their neurodiversity as opposed to
yes.
as opposed to, as, as a person, just like we would with, non, uh, neurodivergent people.
Right, and it's really like making a judgment about somebody before you really know who they are,
Mhm,
what they can do. It's that judgment that impedes, the other person. They feel like they have to always fit themselves into a situation that isn't
mhm.
always the right situation for them. But again, under the right circumstances, and I always like to preface it with under the right conditions, the person can literally thrive and be
Right.
may often more productive.
So
And
what are some of those things that are situations under which they thrive, or what are some of the accommodations that if you make those that you get the best out of them?
it's very individual
Sure.
to that person, but it could be as simple as today somebody called me and they said, uh, my spouse doesn't understand that for me, working in an environment where I can wear a sweatshirt and a hoodie to do my job is means everything to me. And I'm in this environment where it's very corporate and everyone wears suits or dress
Mhm.
casual business, and casual business does not fit who he is. And that can literally throw you off course with ADHD if you don't feel that level of comfort. So it could be something as simple as fitting into the right environment,
Right.
um, or having the flexibility to get up and walk around when you need to, or having being able to say have headsets on so with noise elimination devices. That could be one thing. It could be somebody being in an environment where you're not afraid to ask questions. You don't fear that you're going to be judged if you ask a question, and you get full on instruction on what's it with deadlines, with some structure around the work that you're doing so that you can do your best. You don't have to think about those
Mhm.
things. You just do it. Okay. These are the parameters. I know what they are. It's very different for each person.
Yeah, but I feel exactly what you said. I feel now that you've outlined some of those, I feel that, as you said, a lot of these are simple. They're not big asks, and in fact,
Yeah.
many of them are things that are common to a lot of people, or maybe are common to the way
Yes.
we work today. I mean, as you said, you're wearing headphones. A lot of people do that anyway today. It's not really stepping outside
Yeah.
somewhere. Being able to ask questions, people should be able to ask questions anyway. So I feel like a lot of these things, as you said, are quite simple. So it's not like you're having to like re-engineer your whole workspace for one person. There's a lot of things that are actually beneficial
Yes.
to everybody. And I
And the
guess,
key,
sorry, go on.
I'm sorry, the key is really knowing what those things are
Hmm.
and being able to articulate them confidently,
Right.
and to have them all written down in detail. And sometimes it's great detail.
Hmm.
And that's one of the elements that of the working conditions piece that I work on with people. So they know before they even apply for a position, they know the questions to ask, and they get the response from the employer to see whether or not they're open to allowing them to work under those conditions, and if they'd be amenable. And if they're not, to say, look, this might not be a great fit for me.
Hmm.
And rather than me going into this environment, I think it's probably best that I step away from this.
Yeah.
And this isn't going to work. And that's okay.
And I think that again is something that, as an employer, sometimes I often used to, like, when hiring people, find that a little frustrating. Is the opposite, is when you ask somebody, what questions do you have, what concerns do you have, whatever, and the person goes, none. And then later, they don't tell you anything, right?
Yeah.
Because they want the job and they feel like they don't want to do anything. But later on, they're then they're settling, they're saying, well, can I have this, or I don't want that, and you're like, well, why didn't you mention this up front? So I think, again, it's another thing that probably most people could benefit from doing things like that.
And not only that, what I tell them, and I think you just said it, you just alluded to this, that when you ask these questions outright without fear, it's like whatever the answer is fine, right?
Yeah.
If it's a no, that's okay. If it's a yes, great. But if you know the questions to ask because you're very clear that these are the conditions that you need to thrive in, the employer very often is very impressed. Like you said, they're like, that kind of puts you one up of
Yeah.
many people who are coming in as what I call job beggars,
Yeah,
you
no, I
know?
agree with you. I'd be impressed actually. Particularly when I used to do a lot of hiring, that would have actually impressed me. I would have gone, wow, that's a person who knows. Because here's the thing,
What they
Shell. What you're saying is, here's what I need in order to be successful, and I'm
Mhm.
like, and I will be great. So you know what you need to be successful. Great. Then I can just measure you on the results.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And it's very often we're just so intimidated because there's so many people looking for jobs. And if you need money or you're stressed or you're going through personal
Hmm.
problems because you just got fired, laid off, or whatever. And so you're trying to get something as quickly as possible. And you aren't really armed with this information,
Yeah.
it puts you in a one down position. And I don't think it's good for anybody if the person being interviewed for a position is in any kind of one down position. They need to be the one they're offering the employer a service
Yeah.
that they can provide, and they need to be able to say, look, here's what I have to offer, and under these conditions you're going to get the best person ever. You are going to get the best employee.
Yeah.
And if those conditions, if you're unable to meet them, better just to say yes or no. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's
No,
okay to walk away.
it is because I mean, there's nothing, as an employer, just like as a new employee, we don't like surprises. So we don't like to find out like 3 or 6 months later about something that was critical to you that we never discussed, during the hiring
Absolutely.
process. I mean, nobody.
I totally agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
So I think that transparency up front is great. Tell me, how has the evolution of the workplace, helped? Because we're in an era now. You have remote working, you have hybrid working, you have people who are now thinking, that the traditional ways of organizing, the workplace and whatever, don't really work in this modern economy. Has that made it easier, do you think, to accommodate, now that the thinking is maybe loosening up a little?
So if you're talking about hybrid versus on site, I think uh, I think people just generally kind of gravitate towards the hybrid situation. Some people like to work completely remote,
Hmm.
and they do their very best work. They can set
Yeah.
up their environment in the way that they can thrive in. They can take the breaks, all the things that they couldn't do on the job, where they might be observed or over observed, uh, can be very nerve wracking and can actually cause a decrease in productivity.
Hmm.
So I don't think employers realize that when people feel like they're being surveilled or being watched or whatever, that it's not helpful to getting things done. It just can create all kinds of problems. So rather than finding out how a person is actually going to do their best work, what it will take for them to do that, and to see if it fits into their environment, it makes so much more sense. And yes, the many of us, especially if we're introverts, and even neurotypical people are introverted
Oh
and
yeah.
extroverted, right? Um, prefer that remote work,
Hmm.
and plus we all know that it saves a ton of money to work from home
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
working in a different city. I mean, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very individualized. It just depends on who it's one person is as different as the next when it comes to
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And just to make things fun, there's introverts and there's extroverts, and then there's introverted extroverts and extroverted introverts that are situational. So it's just, it's always
It
fun. But
is.
fun
Yeah.
with people. And I guess that thing is that and also providing, clarity in the workplace. Like, yeah, it was interesting, the one you mentioned earlier about the person with the hoodie, right? And
Mhm.
maybe if it's an environment, where there's, it's more business oriented clothing, but maybe their job doesn't require that part. So you could accommodate that, but you have to make sure that people understand that accommodations are made for a reason or whatever, and it's for productivity, whatever it is, rather than, I guess the biggest, rather than people going, well, why is one person wearing a hoodie and the others aren't.
Yes, that's always a concern is like, well, if we're going to accommodate you, what's everyone going to say? And is my coworker going to give me the side eye and, think I'm getting special privilege or whatever? But I think just in general in the workforce, people need to understand that there are more and more neurodivergent people who are out there trying to do the best job they can do,
Mhm.
and without realizing that there's so many external issues, internal and external uh, concerns, physical, emotional, mental, that impact the way they do their work. And um, if they're not in an environment that is really going to allow them to just
Mhm.
be who they are, be comfortable in their own skin. And many people have told me they can't even be themselves, that they have to pretend. They feel like they have to put on a mask. You've heard the term masking,
Sure.
right?
Sure, sure, sure.
And after a while, that really takes its toll, and things are going to start to break down at
Yeah.
some point.
Yeah.
So that's why it's important, I think, for employers and for employees to understand that, to listen, to what the employees needs and see if it's possible to accommodate them. And if they have to have like a conversation with the coworkers about it, then maybe that's what they need to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
But it will help to get the work done. Number one, it will help for, you'll see a more relaxed environment overall
Yeah.
if they're allowed to sort of be who they are, you
Yeah,
know?
and on that note, then is it, do neurodivergent people, are they generally, do they want people to know that they're neurodivergent so that people can treat the,
Yeah.
or is it, I mean, no, that's the question I'm saying. How do they want to be, represented in order for people to accept them as who they are?
That's a really good question. I love that question. Um, Yeah, I basically will tell people, under when you know the conditions that you need, there's no need to even have that conversation.
Right.
Why? When if you're working under the right conditions, you know what they are. You can articulate them. You ask ahead of time before the hiring and during the hiring process, and everything becomes clear. Then there's really no need to divulge that, because now you're in a position to do your best work.
Mm.
And that only can complicate and muddy things, especially when people don't understand the full definition. And if you ask any person who is neurodivergent uh, anything about having conversations like this with neurotypical people, mostly they find that they don't understand. They just don't quite get it. They don't
Mhm.
understand what it's like to live in our skin. It's kind of like, have you ever? I always use this analogy. It's like being in a group of people who have all experienced death or a grief kind of group, and the person leading the group is a person who's never experienced grief,
Right.
but they've got some kind of credential, right?
Hmm.
How on earth are they going to be able to understand what those people are going through?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
so that's why it's so important and imperative to get to really know what you want. And again, that's my work. My work is to help
Mhm.
people figure that stuff out, to be honest with themselves, to be 100% um, open, and we talk about, there's a whole, I could go into a whole thing, I won't do it,
Yeah.
but
No, no, but
it's
and I like the analogy you used there, even about the, the people, the group of people experiencing death, because we all grieve very differently, right? So as you said,
everybody.
everybody
Yeah.
does, and you said, the neurodivergent have very different needs, and it's very situational. So
Mhm.
again, like that's a very good analogy. I think that's very helpful for people. But I agree with you. I think that is, if you are open and transparent during the hiring process about what I need in order to be successful, and then the employer goes, okay, I can accommodate those, fine, then it really is nobody else's business, is it? I mean, this is
It's
like, if
nobody else.
you're
And the word ADHD doesn't even have to come into the
right.
conversation. It does. It's not necessary. What's necessary is knowing what you want and how you work your best, knowing
Hmm.
what those conditions need to be for you.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's I will say that I've been saying that for years, and I know it's been a hot topic lately. Should I divulge my ADHD? I say no, not if you know what you want.
Yeah.
There's
No,
no reason.
yeah, and like you said, I mean, unfortunately, I mean, and I think the thing is, unfortunately, as a lot of people don't understand it, I mean, I wouldn't claim to understand it myself, but um, a lot of people also, unfortunately, we live in a world today where people aren't even willing to learn about things because they're just so distracted or whatever. So it's easy just to take us,
Yeah.
it's easy just to latch on to whatever stereotype or whatever, erroneous information maybe, or myth you've picked up over the years.
That's very, and that, yeah, and so that's always, the danger of saying, "Oh, I have ADHD." I mean, it can mean so many different things. It
Hmm.
really can. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
it is situational with each person. However, there's certain characteristics that are very similar for most people.
right.
And like when I work in a group of 4 to 6 people. When they start talking about their experiences, everybody can relate to each other and go, "Oh yeah, I get that." Right? They really can. They're like, "Yeah, I'm right there."
Yeah,
They recognize themselves in each other. So
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you, Shad. This has been fascinating and very, very, very educational. That's what to be honest, you epitomize what I like about doing this podcast, because for me, it's I like to learn, and it's a learning experience, and I have learned a lot from talking to you today, and hopefully other
thank you.
people will too. All of Shell's information will be below this video, but before you go, please do tell people a little bit more about the work you do.
Yes, there are two things that I like to talk about. One of them is the Your Next Career Move Masterclass, which is an 8-week process that neurodivergent people, and I say neurodivergent because it's not just ADHD, it's autistic, ADHD, and all of the neuro issues, brain issues that people have are welcome. And it's only 4 to 8 people. We go through the whole process. You identify your what we call the career galaxy. So it's a very organized and structured process that our brains need to help you really recognize who you are and become very clear about what you need in the future and leading you in the right direction. So most people come out with the right, and going into the right career path for themselves. And the other thing is my book. It's called Unlock Your Career Path. We use it in the masterclass. It's called A Course for Neurodivergent Adults and Teens, and it's available uh, separately at unlockyourcareerpath.com.
Excellent. And as I said, we'll link to that. We'll link to that below. And I'll tell you one interesting thing coming out of this interview. I will say, as I said, as somebody who's hired lots of people, employed lots of people over the years, if you turn up prepared like Shell outlined and say exactly what you need to be your best, guarantee you that will impress any employer.
Guaranteed. They may even say, we wish we could accommodate you because you sound amazing, but
Yeah,
this probably isn't a good. I mean, it's never going
sure.
to end on a bad note.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But if you know something, there's sometimes there's a bad yes and there's a good no.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. That's true.
All right. Well, listen,
Yes.
thanks again, Shell. Thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.